So let me ask you this. How much emphasis are you going to be looking at and putting into practice? Because we haven't even mentioned that yet, but there's practice on Saturday for the Cup guys. What's your opinion? I'll give you mine, but what's your opinion? What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the DK Garage. I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Joe.
We have a little bit of a different, week as a whole for the NASCAR circuit. Brand new course that we're on. We're at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So that's going to kind of change up how we do our content this week. This should be one of the last times that we have to audible thanks to the NASCAR schedule. So we won't have all of our traditional things that we like to put out there. The race guide, we kind of put that on the back burner. But the one thing that we are going to definitely do is once we have qualifying on Sunday, once that's completed, we will get to work immediately and get out the DK impact scores for you guys. And we will post that on our Twitter, so please be looking there for content because we will not have time to do a race day rundown. We are still in preparations trying to upgrade our equipment so we can go do live stuff, different things like that. But we're not quite there just yet. So please bear with us. But that's our plan this week is the impact score on Sunday and this kind of a little bit of a hybrid podcast.
Yeah, it's exciting. We got another road course here at Indianapolis. It's not the Brickyard right now. We're taking the GP approach to this, and it's going to be fun to get everything kind of dialed in. But before we get started, also, if any of you want to be able to join our fun that we have every week in the DraftKings contest that all of our followers get in on weekly, drop your DraftKings tag in the comments below. We'll add you to the list, and you can get involved in that free contest every week. It's a lot of fun. We've been doing it and seen a lot of uptick in that, and it's been fun to see a lot of new contestants.
Like more and more people every week.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. But, yeah, last week we can kind of start talking about, I guess, to set up where we're about to get into because we were just at Watkins Glen, a road course. Where we're at this week, a road course. This week, like you alluded to, is going to be a little bit different because we have qualifying, same day qualifying, and it's only a couple hours before the race. So that's why we're kind of pushed for this.
I think this is the first time in the NASCAR history that we've had, at least in the Cup Series, that we've had back-to-back road courses, I would think, right?
I would imagine.
Can't think of any.
If it was way back when, and I would imagine since Watkins Glen and Sonoma were really the outstanding ones here of recent years, those wouldn't have been on the schedule back-to-back.
Definitely
so this
not.
is a new area for NASCAR, for content providers. It's going to be fun to be able to have to do it in a rush, and I think to do it in a rush, man, get started with some rowdy energy. I feel
like we need to pop a top.
It's really going to be fun because we've got a lot to go over with the Watkins Glen data from last week. And then from there, the new information available to us we can look at a little bit. But I think this week it's going to be a little bit of a different animal to attack because the Cup Series hasn't been here. We do have the Xfinity drivers from last year got to take part in the inaugural event there on the road course for NASCAR. Chase Briscoe ultimately won, but there's a lot of drivers that have experience there too that we can get to and talk about. But reviewing the Watkins Glen data, what was something or that stood out to you in that race that kind of got you thinking about this week too, where how they could continue the momentum or something along those lines that really stood out to you?
Well, I had a really kind of interesting week. We haven't talked too much about it. Just kind of saying, our lineups overall were so-so. The two guys, I think, the last few weeks I've been trying to do a little different strategy, trying to change things up. So I didn't have as much in my bankroll to play with in this week. It was kind of one of those, like, we're getting down to it. normally I don't usually get down this low, but by the time lineups locked, I had $2 left in my DraftKings account, or 250 or whatever. And most of the race, was looking fairly decent. I went really heavy with Chase. I think he was probably about 60% of my lineups. I had some good single entries, and I played a few 20 entry max, the $4 contest. And I had quite a bit of Larson, quite a bit of Chase. And to get a little different, I went with Chase and Logano. So early on, while I was waiting for Chase to make his way up to the front, both of those were kind of looking, those kind of lineups were looking good. Eric Jones, he was also looking fairly good early. Suarez was, we'll get into him in a minute. But overall, I was like, okay, I liked where things were heading. And just as the race progressed, some of those key guys that did look like they were going to do good had a few things not go their way. Now, this was a pretty clean Watkins Glen race. We didn't really see any big accidents, a couple spin outs. I think Brad spun out like 27 times. But other than that, I mean, we saw obviously the little incident with Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell that everyone is trying to make into the next rivalry. Hey, I guess if that happens, cool. With the sport needs some good rivalries, but I don't think that's happening. I think they're reading a little too much into that. But yeah, ultimately, Eric Jones, I don't know exactly what happened to him. He didn't have a good finish. I know essentially Suarez had trouble almost all day. I think at one point he had to change out a battery or something. They were having electrical problems. We kind of noted that he had some problems at some of the road courses, but the ones he didn't have problems in, he did really well. We're hoping he got a lot of those bugs worked out. They didn't. I don't know what to expect at Indy. We'll get to that when the time is right. And then obviously Logano, he led some laps, was looking good, and I missed part of the race, so I actually don't know. I think, didn't Brad take him out, I believe is what it was, in one of his 27 spins?
Yeah, they got involved, and that wasn't a pretty moment, but all of Team Penske had brake issues.
That's right.
At one point or another, and so you really wouldn't trust being behind them, and they were behind each other at the wrong time and got into each other.
Yeah, so, overall, I didn't have any great lineups. I was, figuring, okay, maybe about a push or something like that. Go in another week. That just kind of seems to be kind of what had been semi-happening lately. And then the race ends, and I check it, and I'm up about, I don't know if this happened to you. I don't quite know what happened. I guess it may have been Chastain or something. I was up about 4x. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, back in the game, build that bankroll back up, like we like to tell you guys. However you guys decide to play. If you're not a big time roller, you got to manage your bankroll. And I don't know, it was about 10, 15 minutes later, I went back to double check just to see, because usually there's a few slight adjustments. And I went from having a lineup in like the low 20s in that $4 20 entry max to 5th. So I actually 12x'd my money this weekend. So with one lineup, basically. So that one lineup was guys we all liked. I believe it had Corey LaJoy in there and one other cheaper guy who ended up doing well. I'll have to look into it. But yeah, pretty good week overall, or nice. Race overall. Would have been much better, I think, if our key guys had really come through. But hey, that happens.
Yeah, and you didn't even mention the fact of why Chase Elliott had to pass so many cars, because him and Christopher Bell both got hit with massive penalties. It doesn't just affect that race. It affected losing the crew chief member, but being docked playoff or points that affect the playoff situation. And Chase didn't get the win. He wasn't up there competing for stage wins either, so he didn't have a great advancement overall on the point situation, but great, looked fast, really fast at the end for sure.
He was running second, like laps that were a second faster than the second fastest guy on the track. Now, we don't know if Larson was holding a little bit back.
Right.
Because he had a massive lead. I think it was with like 18 or 20 laps to go. Chase was more than 10 seconds behind, and he finished like a second behind. Absolutely. If he didn't, he had a little problem at one point in the race where he had to do an unscheduled pit stop because he locked up the front tires, flat spotted them. If he doesn't do that, he has his third road course win this year. Dude is phenomenal. The team had that car set up well despite the massive penalty. If he doesn't go to the rear of the field and has a car that's even close to what he had, this is a completely different outcome of this race. I think he dominates, and you would have had to just have place differential guys to match it. And that's kind of how I built it. I didn't shift a lot of my ownership even after the news. It was just like, the dude's just too good. But one of the things that I did do once that news came out is I decided to go way heavier on Larson because we weren't the height. We were a little worried about what we might see with Larson given the last few weeks. And with some of these other guys that we know are fast, like Christopher Bell. But once he was out, it was like, okay, he's got to race his way up there. So that was the only thing I think I really did after that news came out was I didn't really dial down Chase. I just paired him more with Kyle Larson, which was good, which led ultimately to that one lineup where I was able to get a good enough combo to really have a good day. Other than that, it would have just been a mediocre day.
Yeah, that was big news, and whenever I found out, I had a really good bit of exposure to Chase, and so I shifted a little bit and went Hamlin and Logano and wanted a little bit more Logano, and that ended up biting me more so than if I would have stuck with what I had. But at the end of the day, it ended up being a plus day at the end. I didn't have any major tournament takedowns or anything along those lines to brag about, but it was still steady, and it was something that at the end of the day you can look back on and go through the slate review and kind of see where you went wrong, because we've nailed one of the drivers this week. Basically my, I guess, free spot on the bingo board, if you will, Chase Briscoe.
Yep. And that's who was in there, just real quick. Chase Elliott, Larson, Hamlin, Briscoe, LaJoy, and Fast Pasta.
Dude, you didn't even tell me you had that big of a win. That was pretty solid, man.
I wasn't supposed to show you that.
Yeah, well, you did. That's pretty awesome. So that's always rewarding whenever you have a week like that. I haven't had a big rewarding week in a few, but you never know when they're going to happen. I think, like you said, we're getting down to crunch time. We can go ahead and look at all the data that we have available to us and kind of look at it and analyze it, and then understand, I think, the bigger picture of where we're at in the season and how it affects week in and week out these drivers and their approach for these teams. And that's, I think, the difference maker.
And let's do that, but I think this is a great moment to kind of point out to anyone everyone who is watching. That's kind of a good lesson. We all play differently. We all have different bankrolls to play with. We all have different styles. But if you think that you're just going to come in here and profit every single week, that's not honestly why we got in this, because we just know that that's just not going to happen. But the way that you play it is you go heavier on weeks, when you feel comfortable. If you're not feeling comfortable about a week, go a little lighter. You never know what can happen. But if you're not comfortable with the track or the way the salaries look that week, it's okay to go lighter. It's okay to go heavier on the days you feel good, but manage it. Because ultimately, if you just chalk it down to wins and losses, you're going to have way more losses doing this than wins. But when you play the game and you strategize it right, the wins, the amount that you gain or get, will overcome all those losses. I haven't deposited anything in DraftKings in a long time. I thought I might have to after Watkins Glen there for a little bit. But that's just the way to do it. You're doing the same thing. You said you hadn't had a big win in a while, but you've had enough to keep you going, because it just takes one. Yeah. I didn't expect that one to be the one that did it, but it's like, hey, just to kind of cover your bases.
And then it's always rewarding whenever you're able to take a little off the top and then have a little splurge, if you will, and be able to go treat yourself. So then you still manage your bankroll from then, and you don't have to ever really worry about depositing if you do it right and you approach it from a statistical and analytical viewpoint. In my opinion, I think that's been the difference maker, and then truly understanding, like we were talking about, where we're at in the season, who's got what to up for stakes, I guess, at that point, and really try to look at it from a bigger picture and link the two into this DFS environment. It's a lot of fun.
Yep, absolutely. So let's get into, is there anything else that we really need to cover? It's for really the detailed information, you can check out the last podcast, because I feel like it's going to be mostly the same guys this week. The only thing that we really will talk about is the two road course guys, Cindric and AJ Allmendinger, coming in this race. That's going to change things up a little bit. But other than that, I think we're still going to have to tail a lot of the guys we liked last week. We'll see how it shapes out with the salary, because the salaries are... Have you looked at the salaries yet?
I took a look at them, and nothing surprising yet. Like, you don't know
all the good guys that we would like on road courses. They're pricey. Yep.
And I think this week, especially since it's more flat, it's going to it's wide, and if you've looked at or went back and watched the Xfinity race from last year, there's plenty of room to get around. I think we'll see most of the fast cars up front, since we do have qualifying. That's typically how the result of it is, and it will be kind of a breakaway pack, or not really pack racing. You'll just kind of see some breakaway cars that really have a lot of speed, and you'll see it fast.
Did you get to watch the Xfinity race live last year?
Yes.
One of the greatest races I think I've watched, at least in the last 5 laps or so. Man, Briscoe, Allmendinger, Cindric, and then Noah Gregson was up there.
Justin Haley.
They were there. I think they almost all swapped the lead within the last couple laps. It was raining, obviously, so there was that element. I don't think they're expecting rain this weekend, but if it happens, watch out, because those guys are going to have a nice advantage there. Those guys who are racing in Xfinity will also have a nice little leg up, because they'll get some more track time before the Cup race. I just had to point out, like, that Xfinity race last year was phenomenal. It was a great race. If we can get something like that in Cup this year, I think people will really like this track.
Yeah, it's good. A lot of people are talking about NASCAR kind of losing a crown jewel because of the Brickyard 400 going away and this event taking its place. But we've seen NASCAR really stack up the road courses, and this now is the 6th of the 7 road courses that we have on the schedule this year. And we talked about it going in to the season on one of our opening podcasts, and then along the way, how much of an impact these races have on the season's feel overall. Not necessarily how big of an impact they have on the playoffs, because there's only one of these type of events in the playoffs, but it's affected the overall feel. Do you think it's too many, or are you in the field of, hey, this is just right, I like the way it's kind of going? Or are you even further, where you want more road courses?
I want 36 road course right now. Well, first of all, I understand that the Brickyard 400 was considered a crown jewel race, but the last ones that I can really remember, they may have had a few exciting moments, but these cars aren't really that great on this track. It's just they're not suited for it. It doesn't produce the best racing, and while I understand, like, the history, the prestige of it, I get all that, which we also have the Indy cars racing after the Xfinity. Are they racing after the Xfinity? I think they're racing after Xfinity this on Saturday.
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't had.
But we get NASCAR and Indy, doing a little kind of double header at the road course, so that's fun. But again, I get it's not the oval, it's not that prestigious race, but if the product isn't that good, it's not that entertaining, then why would you want to force it? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think NASCAR decided, I don't know, obviously, that sometimes they make some goofy decisions, but maybe they're just like, hey, we saw that the Xfinity race was really good here last year. Let's see what happens with the Cup guys. If it's a good race, we'll keep coming back here. Otherwise, I think they should fill it with another track, whether that's an oval. I would like it to be maybe another short track. I think that would be the way to go. I like road course racing. It's different. I really like doing it from the DFS side, and betting, because you kind of, there's still unpredictability, but you can kind of gauge it a little bit better. You can feel a little bit maybe more confident. Obviously, we already went through Jones, Suarez. They didn't really come through, but hey, those, we know what kind of equipment they have in that team and yada, yada. But we had a feeling, Elliott would be good, Larson would be good. You kind of know, you can kind of have a good feel. And again, it's just something different. You get to see the guys turn both directions. I really like it because on the ovals, you don't really, unless it's a short track, you don't really notice how much braking comes into play. A lot of times, especially with this package, the 550, I think the guys are barely lifting and they're slowing down, so they're not even really using their brakes. You're completely eliminating the other pedal with this package. When it comes to road courses, man, if you are good on your brakes and know how to get in and out of corners, you're going to be a front runner. And to me, that is exciting. It's exciting because the teams will have to use multiple spotters. There's blind spots on the track where it's up to the driver. If you got a guy on your outside, your spotter might not be able to tell you that he's out there. You got to just know. You got to have really good car control. So for me, and the technical side of it, I like the road courses. I think we could lose one, keep it between like 5, maybe 6 or so. 7 is kind of pushing. I know they weren't intending to have 7 on the schedule, but because of COVID and California and Auto Club, they decided to not run that this year. That's why we got that 7th, the Daytona road course. But I don't know. For me, I really like it. Are you on that camp that's kind of against the road courses? Because I understand the kind of the foundation of NASCAR is oval racing. It's not supposed to be like some of these other series. But I think these guys are touted as the best drivers in the world. They need to be doing more than just 2 road courses, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like the historical aspect of what Indy brings to the table, and Jeff Gordon, how it impacted him. I grew up a huge Jeff Gordon fan,
of course.
So that was a big race for me that stood out, really helped propel his career. But at the same time, I do really enjoy the technicality of road course racing and that extra element of what you need to bring to the table to succeed. And it tests a lot of drivers to their limits, and you can see drivers that really step up and take on a new challenge, and then the ones that are like, I'll just look on to the next week. To me, I think it really does set different drivers, in my opinion, on different pedestals and the way that I view them, but it might not necessarily matter at the way the playoffs are impacted or whatever the case is. So to me, overall, I think it's kind of a nice mix in the way that they've got it staggered throughout the season. Obviously, this is a back-to-back, which is going to be fun. To me, it's cool to have something a little bit different that we haven't seen before. And especially with it coming off of Watkins Glen, one of the traditional road course races that's been on the circuit for a while, and then coming and backing that up with this traditional racetrack of Indy, and now you're throwing this little wrench into it. I think it pairs well, and I'm excited for it because last year's Xfinity race was awesome. Yeah. And if we can get that same type of action, which I think we will, it will lend to the best cars, the fastest cars, up at the front, at the end, and strategy will be involved. So maybe Chase is out there for a good portion of it leading, has a huge impact on the race, and then at the end, because of strategy and the pit strategy and stuff along those lines at the end, he might not find himself at the front and have to battle back like we've seen him being capable to do, or being able to do and capable of it. So I'm excited to see how it ultimately plays out.
Now, one thing I think NASCAR should look at, and I've heard some people kind of talk about this because the way the current format is set up, there is some flaws with road course racing. And I think since road courses are obviously very different than oval, I think some of the rules need to adapt for road courses. So if they're going to continue to have, let's say, more than the traditional two, if they're, well, I guess now traditional three. So if they're going to have these three or more races, they need to change, I think, how they do the stages and how they do the cautions. I am okay with full course cautions when it's needed, but I think some of the cautions that get thrown, I think that they can have a local yellow like they have in most series. And I think for at least the first stage, especially on, we won't have a comp caution this week, but like last week we did because they had no practice, no qualifying. If they continue that into the next year, for the first stage, I guess if they're going to have a comp caution, don't throw a caution after the first 10 drivers finish the stage. Just give the leader the green checker, count them through. Once those 10 are going, I mean, you keep going green. You keep it more like a traditional race used to be. For the second stage, I would be okay with them throwing a caution. It's not quite halftime, but hey, it gives the fans time to kind of get up, get some concessions without missing any of the action. It does allow for at least one known caution for the team, so they can at least strategize around that. Because, listening to a few of the guys, like some of the guys on Door Bumper Clear, they're just like, everyone does the same strategy now. I think it was the Truck Series race. The strategy, I guess, just to back up, is you pit right before the stage ends, and you set yourself up for the next stage. Well, I think it was the Truck Series. I don't know which stage it was, but one of them, Austin Hill was leading. They all came in to pit before the end of the stage, and he still ended up winning the stage. And he was still able to stay out front because they all had the same strategy. So I think those are some of those things that NASCAR could address to make these races a little bit more exciting, maybe a little bit more unpredictable, kind of give that NASCAR feel again. But as far as the track and what we kind of see on the track when it's good, and to me all the road courses so far this year have been pretty solid in my opinion. Obviously, I'm going to be biased. I did like COTA. I was there. But I thought it was still fun. Even if you kind of discount the Rain Cup race, Xfinity and Truck was, I thought, fun racing. And I don't think anyone really kind of talks about that. It was a good, challenging course for these drivers to handle. So I'm fine with road courses. I like it about where it's at, maybe a little less. Probably not any more. But if they can just tweak some of the rules for road coursing, I think it would be really good. Do you have a different opinion on that?
No, I think that's fine, but I'm wanting to understand. I haven't asked you this question before. What's your thought? We saw the Nashville Indy race,
the street course.
What are your thoughts on, maybe I've heard Chicago being thrown around as an event site for NASCAR to do a street course? Is that something that you would? That's next level. Is that something you would entertain as
I think doing a street race would be fun. What I saw, I didn't watch the whole Pro Invitational for the street course. From what I saw, it didn't
the iRacing event.
The iRacing event, yeah. From what I saw, the course didn't excite me that much, so I don't think I'd be much of a fan of that one. But I've really enjoyed the Indy race. I don't watch a ton of Indy action, but I even had a buddy over, and once he saw that it was coming on, he was like, dude, that looks awesome. And the fact that they were going over the bridge both ways, was it the Korean War Memorial Bridge or something like that? Super cool. I don't think that the Cup guys could race on that circuit the way it was laid out there, because it's just, the technical parts are too tight. I mean, it wasn't even wide enough for the Indy cars. And the fact that the guy who won at one point was literally like this, like it looked like a rocket ship about to take off because he ran in the back of someone and the whole car went up, and how he got away with only changing a front wing and being able to come back and win the race is almost absurd, but it happened. I guess it's kind of fitting it would happen on a ridiculous course like that, but I'd be all for it. If they can get a cool looking a city that obviously wants it, that's got maybe some cool landscapes, like where they race around something cool like the bridge or something like that, I think it would be awesome. And I would be okay with sacrificing one of these road courses to do that. But it needs to, I think, kind of rotate around. Maybe 2 years, get kind of set up for it, and then rotate it.
Well, we could just go ahead trade Coda for Austin Hill Country and see if that entices enough of the NASCAR brass to make that decision.
Or going down Congress and looping around to Lamar or something like that.
Yeah, the Pennybacker Bridge would be a cool view too.
That would be cool. A little far out though, but there's a lot of cool places in Austin. But I do like Coda, so I'd be okay if they kept that Coda. But I get what the point is that it would be cool to see it if the spot is right, if the track is wide enough for these cars. If I was even semi-close to Nashville, I would have tried to drive up there to see that race because it was really cool looking. Looked like the fans were into it. Well, I guess we'll see what happens with Chicago.
Yeah, well, I think we need to get kind of down and dirty with this week and talk a little bit about Indy and what we could expect. I know we talked about how exciting that Xfinity Cup or that Xfinity race was last year, and I think we need to talk about some of those drivers that have that experience that were in this event last year. Chase Briscoe, Justin Haley, Allmendinger's coming up, Cindric's coming up to race this event. They'll have time in the series on Saturday. They'll have a little even more experience to add to the event when it comes to qualifying on Sunday morning. Then there's other guys that were part of this, like Josh Bilicki, Anthony Alfredo, that, man, they are going to be really cheap. They're probably not going to be very fast, and I don't really think we'll see very many accidents. I don't know how much they'll play into the mix, but we could see some.
Yeah, that's tough. I wish I had time this week to go back and review that Xfinity race because I don't remember the whole race. I just remember loving the ending of it because it was so intense. Yeah, I think you're going to have some of those cheap guys to get the guys that you really need because for sure you're going to want to have exposure to Elliott. You're going to want to have exposure to Larson. Now, again, all of this is everything that we say right now is really pending on the starting positions. Because if Anthony Alfredo starts 13th for some strange reason, I don't want any of them. Because I do not see him even maintaining anywhere close to that.
And that's why we don't want to talk too much about particulars on, hey, we like him and let's hone in on him because we haven't seen qualifying. Once we get that information, we'll be able to put our impact scores out like we do every week, which is a scale of 1 to 10. 10, we really think they'll have a big impact on the race, and that will be determined by where they start and a lot of the factors that we sit and look at every week to determine, hey, how much value is this guy really going to be able to afford us, and is it worth it? And then we really try to find the guys that have those strong paths to value, and that comes from us taking a look, too, at where they're at in the playoffs and a lot of other factors that go into that.
I agree with that. The only thing, the slight little caveat I'd have to that is, unless your name is Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, or Kyle Busch, I won't really care where they start. I won't care if they have to go to the back because I think that will change how much exposure I may have. Truex is probably another guy you could throw in there, but I feel like even despite leading laps, Truex on these road courses this year just doesn't seem like Truex of the last couple years. So he's a guy I'd be a little bit more leery of. Hamlin, I think, is a guy you could probably still feel comfortable with, even if he has to come from the back, because he's fighting for that regular season championship. So I think some of these guys that are at the very top of the driver rating board for road courses, I think they're kind of a play almost no matter what, where you can fit them in, unless you just want to fade one of them and risk it. But you're right. All these other guys, they're going to be very dependent on where they start. Are they starting from they qualifying high but have to go to the rear because they have to change an engine or transmission because something happened, or unimproved adjustments or something like that. That's when the impact score that we're going to put out is going to be so crucial because we can go through here and we can tell you who is really good on road courses and who's likely to be good. But based on the salary and their starting spot, that could take them right out of the conversation.
Yeah, we could be all over Ross Chastain or Tyler Reddick, and they're in a nice price tier if they start in the teens. But if they're starting first or second, it's going to be, in my opinion, hard to have them reach value. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's going to be much more challenging, and there might be some other value in that kind of same price range that we'll want to target more of.
If Chase starts in the back, even if he qualifies high, and Chastain starts up front on the pole, I'm probably going to have still some Chastain because then he can lead some laps while Chase is making his way up through the field. So that's a scenario that may work out for him. But I completely agree. Like some of these guys who are in nice spots right now or who we think could be in good spots could see themselves right out of our lineups because it just mathematically just might not make sense.
Yeah, and with some of these guys that we're expecting to potentially dominate the typical road course ringers, if you will, Chase Elliott, Martin Truex, and then you have now Austin Cindric coming up, Allmendinger, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson. There's a lot
Christopher
of
Bell.
Christopher Bell even. There's a lot of guys. Joey Logano's been in the talks, but he didn't have a strong performance last week. But there's a lot of guys that you might want to have exposure to.
Another guy that again will be very dependent on the starting position, but Kurt Busch.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty solid on these road courses. I wouldn't expect a win or anything like that.
And he's $1,000 discount from what he was last week, and that's something to pay attention to. Where he qualifies, he could have a strong performance. I think another really potential free spot on the bingo board is Chase Briscoe. I really, in my opinion, think he's one of the favorites on the outside to win. He won here in the Xfinity Series like we talked about. He has the experience on road courses and has really performed well this year. I think he's a strong contender this week, but we'll have to see where he qualifies.
Real quick, while you were mentioning that, I just wanted to point this out. Kurt Busch has the fourth best out of all the drivers who've run all 5 road courses this year. He has the fourth best average finish. So Chase Elliott's number 1, Hamlin's number 2. Oh, sorry, I missed Logano. He's actually 5th. Kurt Busch would be 5th. But still, you got Hamlin is in 2nd, Logano's 3rd, Larson's 4th, and then Kurt Busch. He's right there. He's got 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s. So, again, if you can get him starting kind of like how he did last week, 17th, 18th, something like that, that could be not quite a free square, but pretty close to it.
Yeah, and then I think there's going to be some guys that you're going to need to look at towards the bottom, because the more you look at how high priced these guys are, and if you are wanting to pair them with each other, you're going to have to kind of look at the bottom. You mentioned Corey LaJoie was somebody you looked to last week. Anthony Alfredo was looked at a little bit. Policki and Davison were in the conversation a little bit as well. But they're going to be probably relevant again to a certain extent, but with qualifying, we're not going to see them potentially in those 30 through 37th place positions. We'll probably see them scattered up a little bit closer in some instances, some people a little bit higher than others. So we're going to really want to pay attention to who's where, and then that will be really how we decide on our impacts.
So let me ask you this. How much emphasis are you going to be looking at and putting into practice? Because we haven't even mentioned that yet, but there's practice on Saturday for the Cup guys. What's your opinion? I'll give you mine, but what's your opinion?
I think you take it with a grain of salt, but I think this is the first time that some of these guys are going to be experiencing this, and so you want to look at it.
It's like a 50-minute practice session.
Yeah, which is not a lot of time, and not everybody's going to spend that full time out there getting practice. So, and the guys that are going out there for the first time are really going to be touch and go and with the way that they approach it. I would imagine they don't want to mess up a car or anything along those lines, so they're really going to try to get a feel for it. So I wouldn't really want to take the practice times into full effect, especially with some of the drivers that haven't had any experience here. I think we'll see some guys like Ross Chastain at the top, guys like that have had experience here. Chase Briscoe might be there towards the top by the time the practice is over. But
which just, you reminded me, just real quick, if you happen to see this before practice, and I would probably suggest this too, going into this, unless, of course, something catastrophic happens, I actually expect Briscoe to have a really good race here. We've already kind of talked about his history, blah, blah, blah. If you're going to be doing any single entry or single bets or any sort of betting, and you like Briscoe too, I would get them in before practice because I would think that he's going to do well in practice, probably do well in qualifying. Those odds will go down. So if you like him, I would get him in early. I already have
Same
some
with
Briscoe.
Chastain and anybody else that you might like that before we get to see them really get on the track. I really think that those guys will succeed early, and so their value will fade quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these guys that are on the track for the first time that might be kind of more on the favorite side, we might see their values go down just a tad if they don't perform as well. I don't think we will, but we might.
Right.
But yeah, if you like guys like that, I have already put in my bets thinking that, hey, that's the approach that some of this might change as people get to witness what's going on.
Yeah. I like kind of what you said, take it with a grain of salt because I'm kind of the same way. I'm going to be looking at the practice. I'm going to observe it. But I don't know exactly how much we can learn from it. But I'm going to make a case. I'm going to give you an example of why you should and also should not take too much into consideration with practice at this road course. I'm going to use Road America as an example. So Road America, Kyle Busch had the first or second fastest overall lap on Road America. But he wrecked in practice. He had to go to a backup car, he didn't run a hard lap in qualifying because he wanted to save the tires, limited tires, high tire wear track. They knew they were starting from the back no matter what. What's the point, right? But even though that they went to the backup car, the fact that I saw him be able to get around this track so good, I was like, okay, the likelihood of them having a complete junk backup car is almost zero. It's Joe Gibbs equipment. So that made me feel really comfortable locking in Kyle Busch, although he was fairly expensive and starting 40th, so obviously everyone wanted to play him. But he led laps. He raced his way up there, and I think he finished third. Really good. I don't know how much Kyle Busch I would have had I not known that about the practice. I see him starting last. I probably am heavy on him, but I may not have gone as heavy. And then the other side of it is, if you didn't know any better, if you didn't know that Chase Elliott was the current best road course driver in the series and on just an incredible tear these last couple years, if you didn't know that, and if you just were looking at practice times, he was pretty garbage at Road America. He, I think, had around, 17th, 18th place lap times, even the average. They were saying how the car wasn't very good. He didn't even get to make a qualifying solid effort because every time he'd go out, someone would spin and mess up his lap. So he started 32nd or something like that. Obviously another free square that week, but he freaking dominated that race. So again, there's kind of almost two sides of it. It's pay attention to it, but don't over analyze it, because I think the history on road courses overall is going to be what kind of ultimately wins out on these kind of tracks.
Yeah, I think it's something to pay attention to. The Chase Elliott example, you really are paying attention and in tune to what he brings to the table. We got to look at also the playoff picture and where that this week might play into things. Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon are right there on the cut line. We've seen Tyler Reddick qualify first at a road course. He could be there towards the top all day long. Austin Dillon has been strong here as of late on road courses. He's somebody that you can lean on a little bit more so than you would have in years past, for sure. He wouldn't even be in the conversation. And now that we're in crunch time with the playoffs, I think he might be somebody you can lean on a little bit again this week. I don't know, based on his qualifying effort, how much exposure you'll want, but him and Reddick are neck and neck. 15 points separates them at this point. One of them's in, one of them's out, and they're teammates.
Yeah, I think, man, Austin Dillon, he's obviously fairly cheap again this week, and he's gotten better on road courses as of late. So depending on where he starts, I think that's going to be a big thing. If we can get him with a little PD upside, I think that's really playable. I think he's around that 15th, plus or minus a couple positions. I think that's kind of where he's at. I am interested to see what we will get out of Reddick, because he's clearly been much faster on road courses than his teammate. And I'm just really curious as how the team's going to approach this race, because currently they're safe. If we don't get a winner from below the cut line, they're still safe. You got to think that they're going to be like semi-aggressive, I would think. Try to get stage points, but don't put yourself in a position where you're so off sequence from pit strategy that you cost yourself a potential top 10 or top 12 and end up finishing like 18th or 20th just because you have to pit late when everyone else doesn't. So I would think that they probably won't take too many chances. I don't know if Dylan will either, unless he hasn't gotten any stage points and they find themselves deep in the pack. Then I think they go fairly aggressive on their pit strategy. What are you thinking about them?
I don't know, because I think Austin Dillon needs something. To me, I feel like he needs to like put another notch in his belt. Like, hey, I've stepped up and I've done something to take this next step as a driver and to propel himself into a position where he feels like he belongs in the playoff conversation every year, because he's been in that mix, but he hasn't really established himself as somebody that you can rely on. And if he steps up, especially this year with so many road courses, and he's able to overtake Tyler Reddick, who was a rookie last year. Don't forget that. This dude's been performing, and he's been able to really succeed on road courses, which has been an evolution of the way that he traditionally has been viewed.
But don't forget, Reddick is a 2-time Xfinity champion.
No, he's a damn good driver.
So, I mean, he is no slouch.
No.
I feel like, I didn't watch a ton of Xfinity at that time. I would see some races here and there, of course. But I followed a little bit more closely these days. I'm still way more into Cup. But it was weird because it seemed like that was the era of, Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, Tyler Reddick. And those three were always talked about, but it was always Christopher Bell 1, Cole Custer 2. And then Tyler Reddick is below them, but not right up there. But yet he beat both of them out in the championship 2 years in a row with 2 different organizations. The dude can definitely drive. I know he doesn't have that win yet that Cole Custer got a win last year, and then obviously Bell got that win earlier this year. So he hasn't got that notch yet. But this dude is a very talented driver. I don't think any of us really expected what we've seen from him on road courses this year. He's really stepped up, but this is crunch time. And also just be kind of interesting to see since they're teammates, where does that team put the effort in? Are they putting it as equal in both? Are they going more Dillon? Are they going more Reddick? How are they going to really play this?
Yeah, I think it's pretty equal right now, and to me, honestly, it could all be for naught. I'm really viewing this as a Chastain or a Briscoe kind of race potentially, and then therefore that playoff line gets pushed even further. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, because if Chase doesn't win, in my opinion, Truex is right there, and with the way Larson's been performing as of late, he's got to be in the conversation, obviously. But I think, man, there's so much potential for these drivers, and I think these two guys, Briscoe and Chastain, view this as the only route left for them to get in, unless you are talking about Daytona, obviously.
Right. But, you can't necessarily put your eggs in the Daytona basket.
No,
I mean, that's a Hail Mary. That's a maybe, we're going to throw it up. We're going to throw it up like Doug Flutie did at Boston College and hope we come down with it. I think in this particular track, I'm going to give the edge to Briscoe if it kind of comes down between that Ross Chastain, Briscoe possibly getting in. But another guy that nobody's talking about, and obviously, I mean, that I like him. I wanted to do well, and hopefully he has a continued career in Cup. We will see after this year. But a guy who really had stepped up at Road America and was really he was the highest finishing Penske car, Matty D. Now, I don't think if it's a long green flag run towards the end, I don't think for whatever reason, they do not have long run speed in that car. But if he's top 5 late in the race, and maybe some of these heavy hitters like Elliott and Larson, maybe they're a little banged up or further back, something like that. If he can get a short run late in the race, he is a guy I think that is capable of taking this win, but I do not see it as likely. But it's just as a guy that's below the cut line that I think has a potential here, besides Briscoe and Chastain, I think he's that guy that could spoil it if the circumstances fall his way.
Yeah, I just don't see it because I think this style of racing and the way the track is built, how wide it is, I think it's really going to lend to long runs. And
he finished 11th at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, I'm not saying he doesn't have top 10 potential.
Right.
If he doesn't have a fast qualifying effort because he's still trying to get a feel for the track, and he starts in the 20s or somewhere along those lines, snatch him up, he could get top 10. He has that upside, but I'm not seeing the overall speed in that equipment to be able to have the long run speed necessary, I think, to get the win. But crazier things have happened.
Yeah.
And he's in a pinch. He needs something great to happen to propel himself to the next little opportunity. At the only way he's going to be able to make the playoffs is with a win. So he only has a couple more events to do that.
What about Chris Buescher? Mr. kind of consistency on road courses. Not high finishing consistency, but I think didn't he get another top 20? He got 17th. So he got another. I don't think he's finished outside the top 20 in any road course in his career.
Yeah, it's going to be another kind of situation where you have to watch where he qualifies, because starting where he traditionally starts.
I'm not necessarily talking about just qualifying from the DraftKings perspective on him. I'm just kind of saying also from this points battle, because I'm just looking right now at the NASCAR Cup points.
No, absolutely.
And he is obviously right below Dylan. I don't see he's way too far back in the points to point his way in.
He's one of those guys that would really need something to shake at this type of an event. I don't see Michigan really being a place where he gets it done. He could. We've seen him do okay in super speedway events. That could be a sleeper pick there, but he has been consistent in road courses for what he's been in. I just really don't see that team having the speed, especially with the way I think this is going to play out, to be able to contend.
Yeah, I think he's someone you look at for your lineups given the right circumstances. But, yeah, to potentially upset and win his way into the playoff situation and the playoff grid, I agree. It's going to be it would be a tall task for him to do that at the Indy road course. But we know that he can still get around, both left and right corners.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see. We're going to have to watch the way it all unfolds, watching the practice. Then ultimately, Sunday morning, we've got it bright and early, and just a couple hours before the race, it's an early race.
Super early.
Qualifying is going to be the big impact, and we're going to have to follow that with our impact scores, and you can check that out on our Twitter.
Well, any last little thoughts while we kind of wrap this up? I mean, it's like I said, it's not a normal week for us. We don't have all the normal data that we like to kind of go over and really prep you guys. So this is kind of us just kind of riffing and kind of talking. Anything that you're looking forward to or wanted to say about Indy as we kind of wrap this episode up?
I'm excited to kind of get into this nitty-gritty part of the season. We get this back-to-back action of road courses, and I feel strongly that we gained a lot of information last week. This is a little bit different of the way that it's set up, but these unknown races, I think we have a good upper hand on the way that we view this, and all that's going to be hinged on where these guys qualify. So it's really going to be impactful to get our impact scores Sunday, and when we talk and get that thrown together, we're going to have a lot of thought already into the way we view these drivers, and our thoughts are going to be something that we've really put together for this entire week and blend that together. So I'm excited to come to crunch time and be able to have that conversation and get those impact scores out for everybody. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is I just hope next year with this next-gen car, Nothing else, as far as I know, nothing has really been said on what the plan is for practice and qualifying. I would think that they're going to try to do practice and qualifying since it's a completely new car. I don't think that they're going to do just show up to the track and race. So if they do go that route where we get traditional practice and qualifying back, I just hope NASCAR, please don't do the same day. We like having a little bit extra time. Obviously, if they continue to do same day, we'll adapt. We'll make the changes necessary to keep providing you guys the best content that we can. But I know all of us content providers and whatnot, we would like NASCAR to go back to qualifying at least the day before, just so we can get a little more prepared and have time to get you guys stuff, have time to build our lineups the way we want, all that. That's kind of my biggest little thing, I guess, with this weekend. Luckily, we don't have to deal with this again until the championship race, which that's a whole nother little animal. Obviously, we'll handle that differently, later start time there than what we're going to get here. So more time to get out good content. But I'm with you. I'm excited to see how to either see if Chase or Larson gets another 1-2 finish and who is the ultimate victor there, or if we do get a guy like Cindric just to completely throw things off, or a Briscoe to shake off the playoff grid, or just something else. We're just getting at that point in the season where these races are starting to get so huge. Denny Hamlin and Larson, they're tied for the regular season championship. If Hamlin loses the regular season championship, he's going to lose those extra potential 5 bonus points, and he already doesn't have hardly any playoff points. He's a guy who could get theoretically bounced in the first or second round if he has a couple poor performances, and he's been one of the most consistent guys all year, but he doesn't have the wins that some of these other guys have. So there's so many storylines happening, which is obviously what NASCAR wants. There's so many things happening at this time of the year. It's the best.
NASCAR has advertised it as the best season ever, the greatest season ever, and you help make that happen as the fans. We are big fans too, so if you've liked what you've seen today, go ahead and please hit that subscribe button. It helps us out. If you didn't see something and you want to see more of something else, let us know in the comments. If you liked what you saw, let us know in the comments as well. That's always nice to see. But we definitely appreciate the support. Everybody that's listening on the podcast form, the audio-only version, we appreciate that. We've seen a huge uptick in downloads and comments in that. We actually peaked out in the top 100 top 100 on the charts for fantasy podcasts. Thank you very much for that. That happened in July, so we appreciate the support on that platform. And also, thank you for all of our Patreon subscribers. We are truly thankful for your support there. That helps us upgrade our equipment. We run on a tight budget here to make sure we can still pay the bills at the end of the day. We have family and real jobs and all that. This content thing on the side is just a hobby of ours, so we definitely appreciate the support there. And then any of our social media, you can find that in the links below in the description. You'll want to make sure you're following us and check out our Twitter this week, because that's where we're going to be releasing our DK Impact scores after qualifying. Other than that, man, it's been fun. I'm excited. This is another week that we got to do this, which is always a benefit and always fun, and I'm always grateful for that. So without further ado, I'm Joe, that's Jeremy, and this has been the DK Garage, and we'll see you next time.